time I sit down with Marvin, he has so many amazing ideas, and like I just want to soak it all up. So now we all get to soak it up. Each presenter is going to speak for up to 10 minutes, and then I'm going to gently, gong you. No, just kidding. Just like come and put it gentle, give you like a little 1-minute warning, and then we'll have up to 10 minutes to ask them questions, to wonder out loud with them, and just to give ourselves kind of a little morsel of each, and so we can get out of here, respect our presenters' times, and be on our way within an hour or so. Sound good? So Marvin K. White, please come in.
All right. Yay.
How's everybody doing?
All right, thanks.
Good. So happy to be here and a part of this conversation. And I just ask that you just come along with me.
Yes.
Close your eyes and pretend you're a room full of black people. I'm kidding. No, you don't have to do that. I have to do it. So yeah, just come along. Molly just mentioned that I have a lot of ideas, and one of the reasons why I love, church, is because it's a place, it's an institution, and it's built for. There's a possibility that my ideas won't disappear. That they can be, if I speak them into this space, they can be housed in this space, and I can return to them. I think there's something vulnerable about being an artist in the world and not attached to a church. The momentum and the velocity at which we have to move and create is often without a safety net. Our work is often ephemeral and disappears. It is sometimes the poster, the banner, the thing that we say, the chant, but it's often not saved and preserved. And how is church a space where that can be in partnership with public artists and thinkers? And I think that's important. So I'm going to read and talk and wax theological and have no answers for you. Did you think it and did you do it? Did you believe it and don't you deserve it? Yes, yes, and yes. Yes, for all days to come, for all things, for the things you're called to do, to make art, to make family, to make friends, to make love, to build homes, to build community, to house friends and family, to house ideas, and to dance. Yes, to dance. Yes, I see it all. We use our eyes as projectors of our dreams. Film. We have to see our own show. We have to read our own book. We have to hear how our caring can change that girl's life, how our chicken and dumplings could save a marriage. Our hand is the glue, and that's the fun stuff. So we can't be afraid of not being seen, of not being young or being unloved. We have to be an example for our bodies, give it a lovely alternative to reweave itself when it thinks there will be holes left in our hearts. This is not a letter to Santa Claus. You can expect a present. Some presents, you won't be disappointed. You get something for being on both lists, the good and the naughty. People will know your energy is good. That is what will reunite you. That what will unite you will not be your fear or desperation of you, but that we are all love. Your body is the one that invites us to jump in and try love, to understand that difference is beauty. Understand that difference is beauty. Tap into all ancestors who hated their bodies but danced and danced and danced to come to an understanding of the four corners and the bump and the slide of creativity, spirituality, life, death, family, love, hate, everything. Child, love is a handle worth holding on to. Uniqueness is a tool of acceptance. A day is in your own time, and ain't no such thing as asking love too many questions. You stay ready, because you're the just in case somebody comes by hungry. The way made. So church is not just a place for Christ trinkets and how-to books. Church is a spirit, not just a place for pillows and pictures. Just ask. Go to the corner where spirits live and introduce yourself. It is waiting, it's been there, and it's done that. So the opposite of creativity is not a lack of creativity. It is a lack of motion, inertia. So if you're in a stuck church, the way forward for you is exactly through an application of creativity in the arts to add to what you're already doing or what you are endeavoring to do, which is to say the application of art forms, dance and poetry and liturgy, but also an application of motion. So keeping bodies in the space, keeping creative bodies in the space, not just the dead ones on the plaques, on the backs of the chairs, but bringing new bodies and our own daily resurrected bodies into the space, moving outward into the community, and to do that through creativity and the arts. So the difference between church doing art and art doing church is that there is often a privileged passivity that the congregation has gotten used to. If you come to church, sit and listen, stand and sing, leave and wave, the preacher will say the thing, or you will receive the Eucharist and you will be transformed just by showing up. Oversimplified, I know, yes. Because what I'm talking about here is what Dietrich Bonhoeffer called comforting the troubled and troubling the comfortable. So now art doing church is radically different. It is the church that I am starting. It gives the tools of creation back to creation. It says, here is a pencil, here is a brush, here is a dance floor, here is an art class, here is a workshop, here is a choir rehearsal, here in the church. Art doing church brings vision inside the church. We don't need to hire accountants, and I have nothing against accountants, but we don't need to hire accountants to do the visioning work of a church. A community steeped in creativity and creative practices are primed to lead themselves. Prophetically, who else can see a way out of this world's mess than artists? I want no other social science, political science, public health, or public policy lens to look through, to find a way to understand that equity, or in this case, prophetic equity, looks like. I want a knitting lens. I want a chorale lens. I want to learn to pray chorally. I want to serve communally and not just communally. I want to understand horizon and depth and shading and drawing and apply those to my church life and my church walk. Yes, creativity, not just tacked on to the liturgy because we need a poem or a song here, but to be a full-on invitation to bring to bear a poetics or a reorchestration of the way we think about church. It's tantamount to our survival. So what could that look like? I can't give you all my ideas because, like I said, I'm going to start a church one day. But I can tell you that I'm going to have in my church a flexible, multi-use, multi-purpose space where folks who are working in the margins on the outside, who we pray over and for in the inside, can have a place to come in and download and dump and archive their struggles and joys with a community like us tasked to be the counter, the inside the box to their outside of the box. We are their family. And before they hear the call of the next shooting of an unarmed black man, the next rape on UC Berkeley's campus, the next tuition hike, the next rent hike, the next eviction, the next defunding of an art space, my church will be that place. But I can ask you, what are the tools you need to effectively, without worry or lack of materials or resources, what you need to participate in the creative process that you love so much? I can ask you, what are the visible signs in the church that would show that it is indeed a responsive, living thing? And what is the opposite of pristine? And what is the opposite of a safe place? And how do we understand the root of the church as ecclesia, the examining of the role of religion in public life? If we ponder these questions in church, we are safe in the truth that we create by asking them other worlds. So when we ask, what tools do I have? It means that outside there's someone without tools to survive. When we ask what a responsive church is and what is a living church, then we know that there is someone outside who is non-responsive because their church died. Will our church stay pristine when outside there's no space for somebody who does not, will our church stay pristine When outside there is no space for somebody that does not have to sweep their squat or squalor of needles, refuge, and detritus. Art doing church is also anti-capitalist. It says that our creative, moral, and energetic economies are the currency in God's land. And at the end of the day, I think we fear that we might wake God up if God hears us putting wheels on pews, creating art galleries, and creating sustainable sanctuary for all who are at risk for displacement, all who are at risk for othering, all who are being defunded, surveilled, policed, killed, separated from their families. We must ask if this is our sanctuary from the world or if this is our sanctuary for the world. God doesn't need another church that's a museum to God. God needs a place that God will send God's friends and God's children. God wants to say, go there. It is good there. There are people on the move there. You are welcome there. Like I said, no answers.
Yeah.
As always, Marvin has given us a lot to unpack and think about and react to and respond to.
Oh, yes.
With heart and mind and soul. What did that stir in you? What questions do you have? What wonderings? What do you want to know more about? Say more about that.
I just want to, part of what you said just struck me that one of the things that's happened historically to dancers is that they've often found themselves in churches because churches often have large open wood floors.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's quite common now when you build a building, concrete, linoleum, concrete, carpet, which is awful for dancers, but it's awful for bodies in general. Anyone who has
Yes.
knows this reality. And so I just want to kind of name that because there are tons, I know tons of dance companies and those kind of activities who have ended up in churches because they have those kinds of spaces that may not be used as much by their own congregation.
And I work a lot with dancers, and I'm often invited to come and do invocations over dance festivals. And what I know is that often in dance, they perform a certain spirituality, you know, but what would it mean if it's actually the ritual, the ceremony, because it's happening in a sacred space? So they're performing religion in theaters, but what would it mean for dancers to be actually doing, you know, religious dance and spiritual dance in a sacred space?
I have a question about that actually for Marvin. You know, I think one reason often artists are doing their religion in secular spaces is because there's something about sacred spaces that feels or actually is unwelcoming. And I'm always trying to think about ways we can sort of tear down the boundaries, you know, figurative, literal. What could we do? What should we be thinking about as we think about rebuilding that will say to people in marginalized communities, to queer folks, to people of color, to, you know, anyone who, like, to say this is your space. That will automatically say, like, they'll know it at a gut level. This space is for you, sanctuary for you. What are some considerations?
I think, you know, there is the, y'all my people, right?
Yes, we're your people.
Yeah.
What? Are we his people?
Yeah.
So I think there is the one drop rule. You know, if someone who is black comes in, then we have to transform into a black church. You know,
We feel that we have to.
we do have to.
We do have to.
You know,
Yeah.
and that person has to feel as if I'm not an other entering into a space. But all of a sudden, this church has transformed itself into welcoming me, and that doesn't take away anyone's identity. You know, but you are so open that you have put yourself in someone else's position. You know, and that is an active work of God moving through this place. And
Paul said in the New Testament, I have become all things to all people.
yes,
Yeah.
Paul Paul said in the New Testament. No, I'm sorry. I don't quote Bible much. And there's also the part where, when we look at our liturgies and how we program services, that we don't just stick the arts in between what we consider the meat and the major parts of the liturgy. That we understand dance and tacking as intelligences that can lead, and teach from. So maybe everything is not spoken. Maybe the sermon is danced, and space is given for that exploration. And it's not explained as, here's the dance, interlude. It is the thing. Because there are people who hear and learn differently. I tell the story of a friend who was at PSR, who was an amazing writer, singer, dancer, and just didn't do well in school. And this is like a Grammy-nominated songwriter. But he learns and organizes information orchestrally. And that's not a learning style that they could show him in school. So, because it's so academic and so, bivalent, it's either right or wrong, yes or no, black or white, and he was just all over. And he just walked away feeling dumb. And if someone is walking in here and can't see a glimpse of themselves and walk away feeling dumb from God, then that's a crime.
Carrie?
Yes. I'd like to say something because I was really moved by what you said on a number of levels. When you just said, if a black person comes into the church, we transform into a black church. Somehow I can imagine doing that so much more easily through art, not through talking or something verbal, but it's like through moving or drawing or singing or improvising, but somehow I could find that connection in that place, not trying to connect through talking about it, having just a discussion about it or imagining what it's like. I can experience you if we're moving together much more easily. And the other thing that when we were talking that I felt really deeply is I know, like I'm a new member, a new person here, and I consider myself fairly involved, but I'm having some issues with the joining thing, and that's in part because even though I feel like the principles of what Christ teaches about love are really important, and I strive to learn those and put those in my life with every cell of my being. The words of religion, that I choose this person as my savior thing that I heard people say at one of the joining things, I was like, I don't know that I can do that.
Yeah.
But if you asked me who God was, and I could stand up there and dance it right now, it's like there's just, when you were talking, I was just imagining a way of interacting, not somebody get up and doing an exact performance, but just something in a space that allowed anybody to come in and take a brush or move or, anyways, I could just feel it. I can't explain exactly how you do it, but I really think we could figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's the way that they're, and I love, in my personal ads, they ask if you're religious or spiritual. And I put both, because I love the tenets, I love the space, I love the physicalness, I love that there's an altar, and I love that there's a, what is this called? Pulpit. But I also love, the talk of spirit and how it moves as well, and how that has nothing to do with walls and chairs and carpets and pulpits and altars. And there has to be room for both. I think we have, one of the things as a itinerant preacher, that troubles me so often is that I don't feel like I'm in place. So if I was my grandmother, people would say, well, whenever you go to Oakland, go by Miss Bessie's house and she will get you on your way. You know, she'll give you a plate of food, she'll tell you who to talk to and where you go. And you will spin out, but you will always be in proximity to a fixed location. And so churches are important. And I'm not talking about abolishing, or dismantling churches, but how are we the institution that people pass through and stay connected with, and trust that they can return to and see themselves in.
I think we have time for one more. Richard?
I was struck by the comment, we don't need another, God doesn't need another museum to God. And to me, that just came so alive. We need a space that's living and breathing and changing and all that entails instead of just a stage exhibition.
Yeah,
I love that line.
Yeah, thank you. I think we, in the process theology that I love, we allow God to be God by how we design the space. If we want God to be free and run and play, and there's nothing free, and no place to run and no place to play, then that tells you where you want your God and how you want your God to either sit still or move through.
Amen. Yes.
Tom, Tom, your last name, from Berkeley Adult School is here to talk a little bit about the work that he does and others engage in, and how someday we might be able to provide sacred space for that work.
Thank you. I'll try to follow Marvin by starting with the poem.
All right.
Yes. Not mine, but one from Shel Silverstein I think is appropriate, a brief one from Shel. I built an airplane out of stone. I always did like staying home. And I see that as appropriate for this conversation because I so appreciate that your congregation is not building an airplane out of stone. You're going someplace. And you're trying to discern the Lord's will of what's the best, most responsible way that we can do ministry, we can serve our community through this space. So that's a beautiful thing. I am the principal of Berkeley Adult School. We have a main building, which is down on University in Virginia. Berkeley Adult School is part of Berkeley Unified School District. And adult schools in California are something of sometimes unknown, something of an anomaly sometimes in the nation. We do have these adult schools in California that are part of K-12 school districts. Now, just a little bit of background. Historically, the first public school, adult school stuff in California happened over in the city in San Francisco in the 1860s. And it was teaching English to Chinese immigrants. It was also teaching accounting skills. It was teaching drafting skills. And these are things that are still part of our adult schools today, teaching English for immigrants, teaching job skills. We do a number of other things as well. Those are some of the biggest things. We help people get a high school diploma or the equivalent. When they didn't get one when they were 18, they might be 20, they might be 40, they might be 60. Sometimes they're 80. And they're doing it because it's the time to show their kids and their grandkids that this is worthwhile. So that's part of our work. But notably, that first adult school experience happened in a church building, St. Mary's, in the basement of St. Mary's in San Francisco. So this is part of one of our hallmarks as adult schools, is we like to be accessible to our communities that we want to serve. In the building we're privileged to have right now, I'm pleased to say that the accessibility is pretty good. I'm a transit rider and bicycle rider and walker and jogger, and so I know the bus 72 connects on San Pablo Avenue from central Oakland down and on up to Richmond and Hilltop and beyond. That's right in front of our school, and North Berkeley BART is just a few blocks away. And it happens that I don't like to publish this too broadly, that probably more than half of our students are from outside of Berkeley. We are very much a regional school. We are one of the 3 largest adult schools in the county. Here in Fremont and Castro Valley are the 3 largest. Fortunately, to the fact that we've been regional for some time is the fact that the policy changes have happened in just the last couple of years, so that our funding is coming something on a regional basis. So that all of us together from Oakland, Piedmont, Alameda, Berkeley, and Albany, we all kind of get our money together and we work together to plan services together for the community. So that's a good thing. Now, let's talk about a little bit more about ESL. That's a particular interest of yours. This year we're serving about 2,250 people in our ESL program. Almost all of that is happening in our main building. Meanwhile, there continue to be, especially to the south in Oakland, many people that have in the past were being served, or there's just huge demand there. The adult school in Oakland a number of years ago faced some severe budget cuts. Actually, their program was reduced by 90%. And so the good news is this new legislation that's come into place in the last 2 years is providing money for Oakland Adult Ed to grow forward, not to grow back what they were doing before, but to grow forward and deliver in ways that are appropriate to today, and grow forward in ways that will help the learners actually transition more effectively to careers, to colleges, to advance themselves. So those are all good things. At Berkeley Adult School, we enjoy a number of partnerships here in Berkeley. We really like to partner with groups that have in places where there's already people congregating of a particular learning need. And so, for example, we have one of the areas we're authorized to serve by our current funding model is a general area of programs for adults with disabilities. So we hold classes for adults with disabilities, for example, at East Bay Center for the Blind, where already are congregating people with that disability, and actually a deaf-blind person sometimes too. And there we're teaching us, we have a ceramics class, which is a great art for that audience, as well as some physical, some exercise classes and music classes for that audience. But the point is here that there's people congregating who have a particular need. We have, for some time we've had classes for older adults. Where do we hold those classes? North Berkeley Senior Center, South Berkeley Senior Center, where there's already groups gathering of that interest group. In ESL, we have, as I said, most of our programming is in our main building. We have one small class that's a somewhat specialized class at one of the elementary schools in Berkeley, at LeConte Elementary. We have an ESL class that is particularly designed to help parents who are English learners to grow in their English skills, and with a particular focus on getting their kid or helping their kids stay engaged in school. So learning the power of school, how to get online and know how to get feedback from the school, know how to talk to teachers, what are the kinds of questions you can talk to your kid's teacher about, these kinds of things. Again, we go to LeConte, where there's a cluster of parents who are English learners, and because they're there already, it's a good place for us to be and serve. And so as we look forward to not the airplane out of stone that you guys are building, at this beautiful thing that you're working towards providing space for ministry, for service, for your community, that's something that I would keep in mind from my perspective. Who are the people that are in the community there near Dana and Channing? Who will be there when, if, for example, low-income housing did go in, affordable housing did go in? Who would be there? And would they have learning needs? That it would be a good place for adult school to channel some of our resources to address that community. And as I imagine that scenario, I can see, well, it might be that, an English as a second language class could be appropriate. It might be that a high school equivalency class. It might be that some generic sort of job skills or orientation to the workplace, if people have been out of the workplace for a time, it could be very appropriate. So, Berkeley Adult School, we're not looking hard to find any place to deliver new classes, but we would be really interested in finding places that would be strategic and would pool resources with other organizations to make something beautiful and new happen for the community. So that's my non-answers to the questions you're working on.
Questions, comments, wonderings for Tom? Dan?
A two-part question, Tom. Thank you for joining us today. How long do the ESL students at the adult school typically stay with you, and how do you motivate them to stay with you until they're even more fluent?
So, how long do students stay with us? And it varies. Sometimes a student can stay with us for just a couple of weeks and then life changes. They lose their job, or their work schedule changes, or they lost their childcare. Something needs to happen, but they probably haven't met their learning goals. And on the other hand, there are students that I actually was talking with one of our students just yesterday, who was with us for several years, and then in the last couple years was a student worker helping us with some of the operations of the school, went on to Berkeley City College, and is now working at Berkeley City College. But a couple, 3 years is not uncommon. Everybody has their own goals, and we're working to sharpen and pay more attention to our student goals. Everyone has their own goals, and they have their own incidents of life happening that gets in the way.
Janet?
Are there opportunities for volunteers?
Oh!
Are you a mole? That's a good question.
I
think the answer is yes.
For our English learners, for anybody that I just mentioned, as far as the people that we serve, it is a tremendous gift to have other people that could be in classrooms or supporting outside of classrooms. We're actually working towards building up a kind of a tutoring center, resource center in one of our spaces in our building to support like informal, so whether it's in that place or in a classroom, yeah, volunteers would be welcome. Here's what I hate to have to say about that. That as part of Berkeley Unified has their ways of managing volunteers and keeping all the children safe.
Right.
And so there's some fingerprinting and clearance kinds of things. It can be work to become a volunteer.
An important hazing process.
Yes, hazing, yeah.
But it's
Okay.
important.
Yes.
Stan?
Just really quickly, nighttime, daytime, both?
Night and day. Yeah, morning, afternoon, evening. Yeah, our biggest, our smallest traditionally in adult schools is the afternoon. Our building is pretty much maxed in the morning and nearly so in the evening, 4 evenings a week.
Yeah.
Tom, during our introduction, I mentioned that we had the East Bay Sanctuary Covenant here last week speaking to us about their immigrant support services. Do you already work with them? Is that a focus center where people are gathered?
Well, at this point, they don't have space on my campus. We actually have a couple of student advisors that are keeping plugged in to finding out who are the resource service providers in our community to help point people, connect them to those kinds of organizations. I'd be open to that. Actually, I mentioned to you that our school board adopted a new policy related to students, immigrant students, and part of that policy is that the district has generated a good list of resources of organizations. So we do have that. No such co-location happens at this time, but referral is happening.
Martha?
I've always wanted to remind us that at some point in our ancestry, we were all ESL students. So this is not new to most people, in this room, depending on where in the world you were taken from or came from. But I think also that we don't look at an ESL program as like somebody else outside of ourselves coming in. I think these programs remind us that maybe we should be, Christ's second language learners, that maybe we inherited a set of languages about Christianity that we need to relearn. So we're reminded that we're all studying towards and trying to remember or rewrite or learn something different, and have a new language to participate. So it's not just them, but they're reminding us about our language needs as well.
It's not just assimilation.
Yeah.
Or it shouldn't be, sort of orientation and integration. Anyone else questions, comments, wonderings? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. So our next guest, again, something completely different, is Henry Richardson and Anish Talak from Atelier 10. Atelier 10 is a architecture firm. You do full service work, right? We just do sustainability. So they would probably be the kind of firm that would come in and consult with whatever architect we end up going with, just to work us through the sustainability part of the design. I think, for me, it feels like it's just part of our DNA to do sustainability. So I think it's a natural ask to have them talk to us. So,
hello. Hello. In continuing the tradition, we will leave you with more questions than answers. We wouldn't do otherwise. So we are Atelier 10. We have offices all over the U.S. We are consultants to architects, so we really help push sustainability from the client's perspective, or if the architect has priorities. So we're really there to make sure those goals are clear and understand how to get to those goals. And we have offices in New York, New Haven, some other places around the world, but we're located in San Francisco. Many of us live in the East Bay, so we work on a lot of projects kind of throughout the Bay Area, up and down the peninsula, tech projects, small projects. We kind of do every single scale. And what I thought we would do is we talk about kind of the services we provide, so a couple quick projects and how we think about projects, and then kind of see what you guys are thinking about, because that's really, once we understand what you guys are primarily interested in, we can really begin to push on what those goals are and what they would realize in the project. One thing that we emphasize is we're really agnostic towards strategies. We don't care what technology goes into the building. We just care about what you're trying to achieve and then how to get there. And we kind of frame all of our projects from that perspective. So solar panels are great, but is that the most appropriate solution to what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, I think the client visioning is the most important part of the project, because like Henry said, you have all these technologies out there and you're probably thinking about them, but really what it boils down to is what are you trying to create, what are you trying to create for the community? Does this want to be an environmental center that you can bring people from outside the congregation to learn about environmental design or sustainability? Does it want to be a model for sustainability in Berkeley, which is already one of the most sustainable communities in the country? So I think it really comes down to what the client wants to do in terms of visioning and creating a space, working the architecture to kind of create a model for the community. Really.
How do you actually achieve that? What we do, so we are environmental consultants. We do energy modeling, we'll build the whole building, simulate it, see how much energy it uses, think about different strategies of reducing that energy use. We will model daylight to see how the daylight tracks through the space, do you want direct light, do you not want direct light, what environment do you want to create? This is a beautiful example of a daylit building. There's no direct light in here, but you have those deep windows which capture the light and reflect it and bounce it into the space. You also have this nice little clear story or skylight that washes light down the wall. So look at the spaces you're in every day, look at other churches, look at other office buildings. If you have a nice office building versus a really bad one, What type of residential space are you thinking about creating? Start looking around the spaces that you're in every day. Notice how the light works, because that's something we don't always think about, but shapes how we view a space. And the type of spaces you're thinking of creating are somewhat unique, so maybe direct light would be appropriate, or like you have a lot more flexibility than a typical office space. So go around, look at the spaces you're in.
And I think one thing people tend to forget when they think of sustainability is where you think of sustainable environments, creating a building that's integrated with nature perhaps, but we also don't think about how to create healthy buildings for human beings. So I think that's something that we try to focus on in our design is creating healthy environments for the natural world, but also for like, the occupants who are going to be in the building. So in the Bay Area, you know, we all know how beautiful our climate is, and that's something we're really fortunate to work with in some of our projects, is sort of bringing in that outdoor environment as much as we can. And we do a lot of analysis to sort of understand how people can be thermally comfortable in a space like this that potentially could have all the windows open, and then you have benefit of an increased ventilation scenario. So really creating a passive space that makes people connected to nature, but also limits our impact as a building on the natural world.
You also look at like the embodied carbon in the materials that you're picking. Like, for example, the wooden truss is more appropriate than steel. It just takes less energy to produce it, and it may be from a renewable source, depending on where it was harvested. We also will look at the health impacts of the actual materials or the ventilation in the space. There could be some horrible carpet that's off-gassing, VOCs or other things. So there's a whole kind of spectrum of sustainability topics and issues that we kind of look into relate to a building, but it's really important to understand what your priorities are from a sustainability perspective in this building, and whether it's energy or carbon or daylight, and there can be many priorities, but it's really how far do you want to go in each of those areas, and how do we help you get there? And we had a lot of pretty pictures on a PowerPoint, but you don't really need them. I think the point is, like, I guess we don't really have that much to say at this point. What are your priorities? We also want to talk about the process.
Yeah, I think something that we'd be interested in is just understanding where you guys are coming from in terms of your vision for sustainable building. I know some of you may have a working group on, that's what Dan mentioned, on
there's a green committee.
Green committee, yeah. So if you have any thoughts, I think this should be more of a conversation. We can sort of help guide.
Want to just go to kind of Q&A right now?
Yeah, let's go to
Okay,
Q&A. I think that's probably the best way to.
Well, Paul is the chair of our green team. Do you want to say a word?
Putting you on the spot.
About that?
Goodness, first of all, thank you very much. I agree with you that sustainability is, it's in our DNA, and it's, I think, closely tied to UCC principles. They talk about our being effective stewards of resources. The green team itself can't speak for the church, but I think has strongly encouraged the development of a green vision for the facility. I wonder maybe if you could talk about some of the metrics that guide designers and contractors, they being leadership in energy and environmental design, zero net energy for a building as a vision, or carbon neutrality, which we actually achieved last year. I wonder if you could just speak about what's the construct that you as consultants use to help an organization walk through the questions they should be asking.
So that's a really good starting point. We typically call that benchmarking, because there are a bunch of systems that rate buildings. There are a bunch of systems that rate buildings. LEED is one of them. Living Building Challenge is another. Net zero rated buildings. So we really understanding how aggressive you want to be on those targets, and we highly recommend net zero, as that seems to be the current cutting edge of building technology at this point, because you figure out where do you have enough space to produce enough energy on site. If you can't produce it on site, where can you go off site to produce energy? If you're looking at carbon, which we think is a really important metric, how much investment do you make in the building structure itself? So because that has an embodied carbon effect, and how much do you put on because there's a trade-off. The more stuff you put in your building, the more impact it has, but that's less energy that you're consuming, which has an impact. Maybe not locally, but regionally or globally. And we really, if we of course advocate being as aggressive as possible. Net positive is possible, climate positive in a sense where you're sequestering more carbon than you're producing. It's something that we always think is
Like planting green roofs
or even from an energy standpoint, you know that you're going to be consuming so much energy that you can actually contribute energy back to the community, or even serve the additional buildings next door or something. And this is of course only the energy side. There's also the water side. Is there on-site water treatment? How can you minimize your consumption first, and then how do you treat it? And then are there rain gardens? If there's a residential component, that means you'll have lots of gray water from showers. Can you use that water to serve all the toilets in the area? So you're not using high-intensity, very valuable potable water that we have a shortage of. We're out of drought for the year, but that's going to change in about 15 minutes. Yeah.
Molly, may I just ask two quick follow-ups?
Sure, yeah.
Could you address the question of cost? Do green buildings cost more? Is maybe my first question.
They can. It depends on what you're doing.
It depends on the architect. That's not just. But yeah, I think we've had some experiences where clients do ask us that, and we find that it's not really a premium more than 1% of the overall cost.
Right. And just the bigger question: why a green building? Why do you do what you're doing, and why would you recommend that to us?
This is so embedded in our DNA, we don't even really think about
That's
it. Good point.
I think we just have a responsibility to the natural world, and considering where economies around the world are headed right now. As a developed country, the United States has a responsibility to create sort of model buildings for the rest of the world. So that's something that inspires me personally, is being sort of an educational beacon and setting targets high and being sort of a progressive vision for how the built environment can engage with the natural environment.
And sort of related to that, there's also the building delightful spaces. There's also, while sustainability is not directly related to that, daylight and naturally ventilated spaces are really important, and we often forget about this. Even this space doesn't seem like it has any operable windows. It's beautiful today. There's no reason we can't have air and light.
And it's something we've sort of forgotten. I think at least in my generation, we grew up in buildings that had a ton of air conditioning and a ton of mechanical systems, and before those things existed, humans had to live in comfortable spaces, and so it's almost like kind of relearning this process and this way of designing buildings that was embedded in like the human race since its inception in building shelters, the desert or wherever. So it's learning that way of working and kind of bringing it back to the modern world.
So we've held a number of listening sessions with about 120 more than that people, and then surveys. And some of the things we've been hearing in the listening sessions are people want light-filled spaces, people want beauty. We're attracted to beauty as humans, as artists, as co-creators. We would like a little bit more porousness. So, churches in general, especially in this sort of post-religious culture and one of the most progressive, secular parts of the country, church is kind of a weird thing. It's kind of an anomaly. The more we can let people naturally see what's going on inside the building, the more they might be attracted in. So how do we remove obstacles? How do we literally make the building more porous, or make visible what's going on inside to those who are outside? Widen the welcome, quite literally, maybe by doorways or windows or garage doors or something like that. And you guys are, since I got here, I've only been here about a year. One of my charges is to think about church from the perspective of outsiders, and what do they need? How do we need to sort of reorient so that this meets their values and needs? It's like, why would you choose to be inside on a Sunday morning in California if you could be out there? And so, because we choose it because what we get in being together is so extraordinary. But why make it a binary? Is there a way to bring the outdoors in more, and again that porousness, so that people don't have to choose one or the other?
One thing we advocate for is kind of a layering of the building. So like if it's a cold winter day, you can have like just the warm, only condition that you need to condition, and then as you go out, you can have layers of transparency and temperature, and so you're not walking from a cold space immediately into a warm space, but it's a natural transition, and it may be shaded.
Toward a hearth.
Exactly.
Kind of a thing. Wow.
So I mean, you could do that very literally with both literally and figuratively.
How do you do it literally? Like with a fireplace or with a
Very quickly, yes. I mean, you could also do
Thicken walls, you know.
or like a sunrooms, what that called?
Solarium.
Solarium.
Yeah, in the Bay Area, that's one thing that we've tried to recommend on a number of our projects are sort of unconditioned solariums that are, or courtyards or atriums that are sort of in the middle or around the building, and that's where your circulation takes place. So it just, first of all, it removes a huge amount of conditioned space that your mechanical systems are pumping energy into, and then it also allows for this buffer zone that Henry was talking about, where you're transitioning from, you know, a sunny, hot outside to a cooler inside, or cold outside to a warm inside. You have this medium space that is kind of enjoyable to be in most of the year here.
Wouldn't it be cool if, you know, we're always trying to get people to sit closer together, if we attracted them rather than compelling them by having it be warmer up front and
Being the age that I am, I'm concerned about acoustics. Because some situations are so difficult for people who have hearing issues to navigate in and to even be able to communicate in because of the exterior noise.
I can unequivocally say that's not one of our services, but Charles Salter and Associates in San Francisco is the preeminent acoustician in the Bay Area. Sorry about that. It's a very specialized field because there's like reverberation distances and the material properties are incredibly important.
Marvin?
I think this is piggybacking on Molly's question. When you think about sustainability, how do you think about sustainable buildings in communities? How do you not build a building that just sticks out and is weird and looks nothing like the house that has been there for 50 years?
You've just made 20 friends.
But also, what are you trying to achieve? Do you want to be distinctive in the sense you want it to be a location, a hearth, or there are ways of tailoring the architecture. We're straying somewhat away from the kind of technical sustainability aspects, and an architect may be able to speak to this more eloquently, but all of our strategies and features are intended to support that goal or that, whatever the vision of the architecture is. It's an integrated system, you don't stick things on the building, it's all part of the structure.
Great, but there is a way then, as you think about systems to support the architecture, that there could be an excess of energy that could support a community.
Absolutely.
As well. Okay.
I could even see you subsidizing energy bills if you actually are able to produce enough energy on site. We've seen projects, they're in a well-shaded forested area, there's no way they're going to have enough renewable energy on site. They will go off-site and buy solar panels in the desert because they're more efficient, they're cheaper, and they're maintained by a utility. And so they make more sense from scale and perspective. They're just not on the building, but you kind of tailor your solution to your situation. And then you can, for the same price, produce much more energy. And maybe use that energy to serve the larger community. Maybe there's a kilowatt-hour bank that people can withdraw from. There's a Westside Community Access Solar. There are utilities that are even putting programs together.
We probably have time for one more question. Wondering? Dan?
How do you create sort of a living space on an almost basement level dark area? How do you promote rooms that don't have this available natural light, be enjoyable spaces, to be healthy without?
That's a really good question. I think something we advocate for is just sort of working from the sort of concept design phase on those spaces. So instead of thinking about, oh, we just shoved this room, we have this basement, we have to shove more program in here, like let's put it here. Why don't we think about the program holistically from the beginning and say, like, you have this space that think it'll only fit in the basement, but how can we make it something that's more beautiful? And then at that early phase in the design, through the like massing or the like, sort of large scale moves of the project, find a way to give it a small clerestory window to bring some daylight in there. Or maybe it's orienting it north, for example, because north doesn't get very much direct daylight, but it has a lot of ambient daylight, and so you're never going to get direct light to that space, but you'll always have like a light source or something like that. So we kind of advocate from an early stage in the project to explore some of these things.
One thing I want to emphasize about that is the building is the most expensive part of the investment. The actual structure, the concrete, it's a 100-year investment potentially or longer, and you want to make the decisions there that the systems will last 25 years. So you want to really design the architecture to be the sustainable, like, is the orientation correct? Is the program in the right places? Does it have daylight access to most of the spaces? You really want to emphasize there because you're going to be spending all your money on the actual structure. And then you talk about what are the most appropriate systems in that building. Is it radiant floors? Is it what type of VAV system? And then you talk about, okay, we still have some energy use. How do we manage plug loads? How do we manage lighting to ensure that it's always shut off when you're not in the room? And then how do you, finally, you talk about renewables and how do you offset that last little bit of energy you're actually using? So you really want to focus most of your energy and money on the first part, not on the 5-year systems, but the 100-year systems. Last question.
Helen?
Outside the box question, but a question of curiosity. Green buildings provide diversity for persons with all different types of disabilities, obviously, because people with environmental sensibilities, that's kind of thought out. In regards to creating something different and adding art, universal design and usability, sound is an important part of a building structure to be green as well. And just how do these different companies work together with different ideas to pull in the education in regards to creating a building that has a universal usability perspective, so people can be comfortable, people can feel a part of, and it's a piece of art. So just wondering, just from your response in terms of somebody else does sound, but it is a part.
So one of the most important things is we kind of sit between the architect, the structural engineer, the mechanical. We sit between the structural engineer, the mechanical engineer, the architect, the acoustical engineer. And we kind of, the most important thing is they don't necessarily communicate that well, which is a horrible thing. And often, like, we will sit down in a project and say, hey, plumbing engineer, talk to the civil engineer because one of you is dealing with stormwater and one of you is dealing with plumbing water. How can we bring those systems together? And like, you do that for that, you do that for architecture and acoustics, you do that for mechanical and architecture, so that it's not a assembly, it's more of an integrated system. And I think that's kind of where we strive to be, kind of in that balance point between all of those different roles. I don't really want to speak to acoustics because it's a very specialized and technical group, and
I'm just curious because there's a lot of variables. So mind you, I have a broad perspective and understanding different variables. I know that anything is possible from the artist's perspective and from a structural perspective, and it's just something in my viewpoint that brings more people in to have a sense of belonging.
I think equal access in terms of how we measure these things. Like we really strive to create spaces that meet metrics that are very inclusive. They're not exclusive. So they include opinions from a wide number of people, whether they be older people, whether they be women, whether they be people who grew up in different climates. So there's like universal metrics that we use for some of our analysis, like thermal comfort, for example, that kind of helps guide us towards a solution that is not going to be one where 80% of people are happy, but 20% of people are freezing or they can't hear or something like that. So we try to use the most universal metrics in our design.
Can we thank everybody else?